Welcome to episode 17 of Shane Talks. This week's episode is titled, I Was Not 17. I put up a post on the Shane Talks Facebook page asking people about movies that they either snuck into when they were underage, or movies that they might have, come across a VHS tape that they shouldn't have had possession of and ended up watching something before they were 17. Or we found out that some people's parents just did let them watch whatever they wanted to before they were 17. So we got about 40 movies to go through. It's going to be a fun time. I'm joined by Jason Mayer, and we're going to talk about our beer that we're drinking this week. All right, so this week's Sun King beer, we got to do a little history lesson on real quick. Back in January, before the world went crazy with COVID, Sun King had a Sunlight Cream Ale weekend where they released 3 variants of this beer: orange vanilla, dry hopped, and a tropical. 2 out of the 3 of those I really enjoyed, one of them being the orange vanilla version. That became my summer beer. It tasted like a melted creamsicle to me. The orange flavor with the cream ale just mixed together really well. I really enjoyed the flavor of it. I know Jason had some this summer too and really liked it. It was just a very good summer beer. So about a month ago, they released another variant of it called the Lemon Shandy Sunlight Cream Ale, which is what we're drinking tonight. This, being a fan of sours that I am, I really like this beer. It is absolutely delicious. I think it's very tart, very refreshing. It replaced the orange vanilla for me. Not that there's anything wrong with the orange vanilla. The orange vanilla is still amazing and delicious, but I just really enjoy the sour tartness that this one has. It goes down light, smooth, easy, creamy. Really like this beer. Jason, you just had it for the first time tonight. How do you feel about it?
I am gonna say the exact same things you did if I were going to give adjectives of
Nice.
description. So, very tasty. I too like sours. So it's one of those things to me that when you find a beer like this would have been a perfect summer beer. Something to be outside with. It's got the lemon to it, so it kind of reminds you of lemonade.
Yep.
Hanging out with your friends outside by the pool, without whatever the case may be. So very, I like how much flavor there is too.
Yeah.
There's a lot of lemon to it, but it's not overpowering. And then the aftertaste is very calm. There's not much to it. Whereas I'm not a big IPA fan, so like all the just having how much hops you have inside your mouth afterwards, blah, and the blandness of it. Whereas this is almost a perfect beer for me personally. So
nice. And I will agree with you that while there's not a lot of aftertaste with the beer, the back of my mouth still remembers that it recently had some lemon flavor.
Oh yeah, it's still got that Sour Patch Kids kind of back in the back, hey, mouth watering a little bit here.
It's
I don't mind that at all. I love it.
Not at all. It's delicious. It is a very good beer. Hope it either and the good news is they announced I think this week that the orange vanilla is becoming a year-round beer for them. The orange vanilla Sunlight. So we'll be able to get that all year. I hope they at least bring this back as a summer beer. Give me 3 or 4 months of this to buy it in the summer, and I will be extremely happy.
Sounds great to me.
Yeah. So moving on to episode 17. I was not 17. I put up a post that said we've all done it. We've all snuck into a movie theater underage, or we found access to some infamous VHS tape. I want to hear you guys' stories. I want to hear about the films that you guys saw before you were 17. What film? How old were you? Does that make it hold any kind of special place in your heart that you saw something taboo that you shouldn't have seen? And the other thing I need to bring up about this entire episode is this episode's all your idea. 2 weeks ago we were standing around talking, and I was throwing out the ideas of the ideas for the other episodes that are coming up in the next couple weeks, and I said, I have no idea what to do for episode 17. I just couldn't come up with anything. Should I do movies when I was 17 years old, or what should I do? You came up with a great idea. You were like, let's do something about R-rated movies and stuff that you saw when you should have been 17 but you weren't, and that was a genius idea, man. So thank you for being the brainchild of this episode.
Yeah, man. It's one of those things that I had friends of mine who I think I've mentioned this in past podcasts that were not allowed to watch R-rated movies when they weren't of age or not until their later teens. And my house was literally the house in the neighborhood that all of my friends would come over and we would watch things like Die Hard and things that were rated R that these kids weren't allowed to watch at home. But my parents didn't have any restrictions on what I was watching, so I was watching things that I really shouldn't have been watching, including things that, yeah. Anyway, so, but yeah, so it's definitely one of those things to me that it was never a thing for me. Having two older brothers, I was always seeing R-rated movies way beforehand.
Sure.
And before I was old enough, but being a parent now, there is no way in hell that my kids would see what I saw. The great summer of 1987, we just moved back from Germany, and I ended up seeing in that summer I saw Aliens for the first time at home, because it was on VHS at that point. And we got that from the video store, but we also saw RoboCop and Predator in the same summer at the same movie theater, and like both like R-rated hard R's in my opinion. And yeah, at 6.5 years old watching those movies, I can't imagine showing those to my children. And my kids, my oldest is 10 and my second is 9. I can't even imagine showing those movies to them now. Like, it's not a good idea for me personally.
Sure.
Obviously, everybody has their own way of parenting, and I'm not going to judge others. So,
yeah. So my parents were more the opposite of yours. My parents were pretty like hardcore Christian. Like, we don't want you watching R-rated movies. If my mom had her way, I probably still would never watch an R-rated movie to this day. Like, she's just like that. So unfortunately, if my parents are listening to this, they're going to hear some stories that, I mean, I probably don't want them to hear, but they'll hear them. So yeah, it's gonna be a fun time talking about some of this stuff.
They can't ground you anymore, dude.
That's true. They don't even live in this state anymore.
Different state. Yeah. Like,
oh man.
Love you, White parents. Mr. and Mrs. White.
All right, so first up, the first person we got to respond to this almost immediately was Mark Stratton. And Mark Stratton put up one that I assume is going to be on about 95% of every dude's list. I definitely know I saw this one. I don't remember exactly how old I was. It's Porky's. It would have been between the 13 and 15 range. I just can't remember exactly the first time I saw it. How old?
7 or 8.
Okay.
7 or 8 for me. And
did Dave or Michael show it to you?
I it might have just been on HBO, to be honest. Okay. Like, I watched a whole lot of movies when I was growing up, and yeah, like I said, but nothing was off limits in my house.
Right on.
So yeah, I'm pretty sure I was pretty young when that happened.
If you're watching the visual version of this, in the past few weeks that we've done stuff, we've been using Rotten Tomatoes and the Rotten Tomatoes scores to kind of judge critics, judge the audience scores and stuff like that. This week we're doing something a little different. I went to the IMDb for every single one of these movies, and I grabbed a screenshot of the Parents Guide, which is supposed to be for parents to be able to click on and say, like, what's really bad in this movie, like, how bad are certain categories and whatnot. The only really, so it starts at green, it goes green, yellow, or green, orange, no, green, yellow, orange, and then red. Are the categories that it can fall into. This one's got a green because there's nothing frightening in the movie at all. It does have one red for sex and nudity, which obviously there's quite a bit of both of those in there.
Makes sense.
Yeah. But everything like moderate profanity, mild violence, mild alcohol. I thought there was more drinking in the movie, but I really haven't seen it for a long time either, so maybe I'm not remembering right.
I'm not gonna lie. This is something that is not in my collection, like my personal collection. But I would not. I like. I'm not sure why it isn't in my collection. Like, you know, it's one of those ones where it's actually kind of a fun movie, enjoyable.
Yep.
And the cool coming of age story, and a lot more raunchier than something like American Pie. They definitely went with like super raunchy back in the 80s. American Pie kind of brought it back, but it wasn't nearly as risque as this.
Although
And so
I would say that I would say probably a solid evolution in this middle movie we are going to talk about later, well, much later. Porky's, and then Revenge of the Nerds, and then kind of American Pie. Like I feel like those are all kind of like spiritual successors to each other. They're all kind of
well, yeah,
trying to
but
do the
like,
same thing.
well, Porky's Revenge of the Nerds came out around roughly within, I want to say, like within like 5 or 6 years.
Okay.
I can't remember right off the top of my head, but I forgot what I was going to say next. Go ahead, Shane.
Oh, I was just saying that, like those movies, I kind of feel like they all kind of were trying to accomplish the same thing.
81 and 85.
81
so,
85. Okay.
So yeah, you're looking, yeah. So I mean, those, and then you had
Animal House was right before that.
15-year gap until you hit American Pie. So, oh my gosh, just thinking about the fact that American Pie was 20 years ago. It's just weird.
Yeah. So, I mean, as I commented back to Mark, I'm pretty sure that's on a lot of males' lists that they saw this movie well before they were 17. I know I watched it with a group of friends for my first time. The next up, my friend Brittany, she put up Dr. Giggles was the movie that she saw for the first time. Let's see, she said she was about 6 or 7 the first time she saw it. And that's a messed up movie. Like,
never seen it.
You haven't? I can't imagine seeing that at that young of an age. The violence and gore got a red card for being severe. 3 oranges and a yellow. The yellow for being mild alcohol. Sex, profanity, and frightening or intense scenes were all moderate. I mean, you now being a horror fan, I should say you should give it a watch. It's not groundbreaking or phenomenal in any way, but it's definitely a pretty messed up movie.
And I remember the guy who plays Dr. Giggles is the guy who was in Darkman.
Yes.
Like he was the main bad guy in Darkman.
He's got one of those weird names that I should know off the top of my head.
And he shows up in all these weird bit parts besides those 2 movies, as far as I remember. So.
It was in like FX2, or maybe it was the first FX or something like that. But yeah, he just always randomly shows up. And he's a cool actor. He definitely has a recognizable face.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, Dr. Giggles, definitely not one that I would let a 6 or 7-year-old watch. It's pretty gruesome, some of the stuff that he does. Our next movie to talk about, my buddy Ryan Smith threw out there that he was 12 or 13 years old the first time that he saw Kids. Have you seen Kids?
Yeah. It's one of those ones that I've never actually took the time to watch.
Okay.
I remember a friend of mine, Lee, watched it and thought it was really messed up. And I'm guessing we're probably in the same age range as your
Ryan,
friend.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Ryan's definitely our age.
Yeah, so like it's one of those things where like maybe that I remember it being a thing because like he went up to, I want to say up to Chicago to visit family for the summer or something, and one of the girls that he was friends with up there like showed it to him, and I think that's how he got into it.
Right on.
And I remember people making quotes from the movie quite a bit while we were in high school, but like it just never, I was never into documentaries at that point either, so like isn't it, I mean,
it's weird that you say that. It's not a documentary at all. It's definitely a scripted movie. There was a lot of it's Rosario Dawson's first film.
Okay.
But yeah,
I thought, wasn't it shot very like?
Yes, it's shot.
Fake
it's shot
news
very
footage or something.
It's more just shot like a lot of Steadicam. Like it's supposed to be like these kids are documenting their own lives, like they're videotaping themselves, type thing.
Maybe that's what I thought it was, and
right?
That's why I never watched it. So,
I definitely didn't watch it until I was after 17. I was probably like 18 or 19. It was probably around the time I was working at the movie theater and stuff like that, hanging out with the Castleton Arts crew. Those were the type of people that convinced me to watch, or like told me to watch it, so I did. And it was definitely like even being like 18 or 19 when I watched it, it was pretty rough to watch. Like it's pretty real. I will put it that way. Like kids act in the same way that I look at Clerks as like Clerks are how my friends talk and whatnot. Like Kids is how I feel like I kind of lived high school. Worse than how I lived high school. Like, I mean, they're in New York City and they're very like, poor, like bad neighborhoods, like drugs, like all that kind of stuff. But like, I just related to it in a way where I was like, oh, these kids are talking like I talked to my friends in high school, like the profanity and the vulgar and the like, talking about sex and drugs and all kinds of things like that. Like it definitely was one where I was like, I can see why this was popular with kids in the same way that like Clerks is popular with the people that were, at the age appropriate time for that.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a really graphic film. There's some pretty violent stuff in it. It has 4 out of 5 red cards, and the one that's not red is a moderate violence. Which there's still there's some fights in that movie that get pretty graphic. So it's a rough film to watch. And the next film we have was from Claire Purdy, and I made a comment on this. Obviously, not thinking correctly at the time when she said "Good Morning Vietnam." I was thinking of Stripes. I have no idea why, but I put a comment on there that everybody is going to hate me because I hate this movie. And
totally different movie.
Totally different movies. 100%. I think the fact that they're both holding microphones on the poster. There's no microphone on that. Okay.
No microphone on Stripes. It's just a big old picture of Bill Murray looking at you like this, and it says, "I want you."
Oh, see, so the poster for Good Morning Vietnam is Robin Williams pointing at you. Maybe that's how I got him.
The microphone.
He's got the microphone in one hand, and then he's pointing with his other hand.
Oh, okay.
Maybe that's how I got him. I have no idea. I got him confused because I'm an idiot. That's the end of it. Like, so I do not hate Good Morning Vietnam. I actually did enjoy Good Morning Vietnam, but it was definitely not something I watched before 17. I definitely watched it in early 20s somewhere.
I probably saw it like not too long after it came out. Okay. But I'm gonna be completely honest. I don't remember it much at all besides him yelling "Good Morning Vietnam." Like,
sure.
Like that's all I remember. But
and it's got a lot of yellows, 2 oranges. Like pretty much everything's mild for this because I don't remember it very well, and it sounds like you don't either. I can't even think of why it would be rated R. Nothing comes to mind off the top of my head.
I've got some near the end. We'll talk about some more movies that don't belong. Okay. Like they're or are really close to PG-13.
Sure.
And why they decided not to make them that way is going to be on me, or at least like, yeah. Anyway,
yeah, we got a couple definitely that we can talk about. One's coming to the top of my head real quick because of what we'll talk about at the end also. But yeah, so I don't remember anything that makes it an R-rated movie. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. So it is a good movie. I apologize for my comment that said I hated it. I don't. I hate Stripes. I will always hate Stripes. Everybody gets mad at me about it. I just don't like that movie. Moving on. The Blues Brothers is a phenomenal movie that I honestly can't believe is rated R.
I was gonna this is one of those ones.
Yeah, my buddy Jay suggested it. His dad took him to a drive-in, which number 1, that's awesome parenting to take your kid to the Blues Brothers. Number 2, it's awesome to take your kid to the Blues Brothers at a drive-in. That's even better. But yeah, like I interrupted you. Like, why is this movie even rated R? Like, I can't. It has to just be language. Profanity is the only orange card it gets. Everything else is yellow. Like,
yeah,
it has to only be for the language.
Yeah, I totally. This is one of those movies that we were thinking about where like it doesn't make sense.
No, this is
like I mean, there is some very vulgar language at
points. Okay, yeah,
but it's dude. Like language should not, what's the MPA rule? Like if you say 3 fucks, you get in trouble.
Well, it's supposed to be 1 fuck is allowed in a PG-13.
So you can't give 2 fucks.
You can't give 2. But if you watch The American President, there is the 3 billiard scene that has 3 of them in one scene alone, and it's still PG-13.
Yeah, so like that's the one that got away from them essentially. Yeah. But like 2 fucks should not get you an automatic like R rating. Like I think it was Hamilton recently, the one that's on Disney Plus.
Yep.
They had to take out 2. They have 3 fucks in the show.
Oh, okay.
And they had to give up their 2 fucks.
Really?
So and they left 1 in. But it not that it detracts from the movie at all. It's fine. You don't even really miss them.
Okay.
To me personally, but it's one of those things where, like, if that's your only thing, that like three Fs should not make two Fs should not make you an R-rated movie. Like, that doesn't make much sense to me.
So what I was going to say now that we'll get into it closer to the end of the episode is, so I have a 12-year-old stepdaughter who is getting to that point where I'm finding out that she's seen some R-rated movies. But Caitlin and I have been talking recently because we've been trying to think of. Lily is starting to want to explore the horror genre, and so we were trying to think of some movies in the horror genre that we could show her. And the first one that we were both like, oh, we can show her The Craft. And then I was like, well, The Craft is rated R. And Caitlin was like, really? That's rated R? And I'm like, I know, like, I don't really know why it's rated R either. But the thing that Caitlin and I have decided and come to is, like, profanity is not something that's going to stop us from showing Lily a movie. Like, Lily hears a lot of profanity in our house. So, something like the Blues Brothers, where, like, profanity is possibly and potentially the only real bad thing in the movie, this is a movie that I would have no problem showing Lily.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because you say that, and you're as far as the horror genre goes, and I'm like, Lights Out is a PG-13 movie.
Okay. Good. I haven't seen that one yet.
Perfect horror movie.
Last
for somebody who's PG, for a PG-13 one.
Last Friday we showed her Happy Death Day.
Awesome movie.
Which was fantastic. A great movie, and she really enjoyed it. So yeah.
I would think if you're going to go down that road, you could probably also do the original Alien, but sure. I don't know how much she's into sci-fi.
Yeah.
So, but I think that's definitely a horror movie.
Oh, for sure, definitely.
And there's not a whole lot of.
It's really profanity and intense situations.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Which I believe we will get to Alien at some point on the list. Yeah, near the end we'll get to Alien. So the Blues Brothers, great movie, doesn't actually need to be rated R. I would show it to somebody under 17 and not have any problems with it.
Yep, me too.
My buddy Mike Owens has two Wayans Brothers movies that we get to talk about for a minute. The first up being Keenan Ivory Wayans in Most Wanted. It has solid oranges in every category. It's moderate for everything in the R rating. I remember liking the movie.
Is that the plot where he's like a Marine or something?
He's a Marine that's on death row, and then he gets recruited by John Voight because they're going to fake an assassination on the First Lady, but then they actually do assassinate the First Lady, and they frame Keenan Ivory Wayans for it. Have you seen the movie Shooter? Oh, yeah. Does that plot sound familiar to you? Yeah. It's basically Shooter 15 years before they made Shooter. But yeah, it's I remember liking the movie. I probably haven't seen it in almost 20 years, but like I remember, like, again, I am a huge Wayans Brothers fan. All 5 of them, all the cousins, all the sisters, all the, like, Damon Wayans Jr. now. Like, I'm a fan of all of the Wayans and the stuff that they do. So I liked the movie. I thought it was fine. Like, I can't really tell you a whole lot other than what I just described as the plot.
Yeah, I remember seeing it, but I don't remember like much else. It's not something that's stuck in my brain.
So with solid all oranges, I'd have to watch it again before I could say, if I felt like somebody under 17 should be watching it. But Mike's second movie is a movie I know really well, and that's Don't Be a Menace to South Central While Drinking Your Juice in the Hood, which is Shawn Wayans and Marlon Wayans of the Wayans Brothers television show. I did not see this movie until 99 or 2000. It could have been. It might have been 98 for the first time I saw it. My friend Brandy and I, we literally rented it from the video store one night, watched it in her room, and then I basically bought it the next day. I think very, very shortly after we rented it and watched it, I bought it, left it at her house, and literally anytime we were hanging out over there, we would just put it on because both of us just absolutely loved this movie. Like, hilarious. All of the spoofs that it did from Boys in the Hood and Menace to Society and like all of those movies that it spoofed were just hilarious. And I remember quoting it a lot back then. I can't remember a lot of the quotes now, but I know there was a lot of stuff in there like, "What do you say when you meet a nice man? Are you my
You
daddy?"
met daddy?
Yeah, like I remembered having a lot of really fun lines to quote. Profanity is red on here without a doubt. I'd give him a couple hundred f words in this movie. It it's a lot of fun for me. Not something I would probably let Lily watch though.
I would agree.
Uh, do you like the movie?
Uh, I liked it when I saw it, but I don't remember much
Okay,
about it at all. But I think the last time I saw it, I was probably like 16, 17 years old, something
gotcha.
like, when did it come out?
I think it came out in 96, 95, 96.
So I think I saw it right when it hit video, or maybe not too long after that. But I
Gotcha.
don't remember. I remember it being something that my friends Lee and Joe liked a lot, and would pop in and would enjoy. And it wasn't something I didn't enjoy. It's just
Right.
didn't watch much outside of their influence. I didn't watch much of it.
Next up, my buddy Tyler Berry has a really good movie. It was one that took me multiple viewings to like. I didn't like it my first time, but it's Man on Fire. But
Oh
it's
yeah,
one that the more I've watched it, the more I have come to like it. I'm not sure, like looking back, I don't know what I didn't like about it the first time. Um, but like I said, the more I've probably watched it maybe 5 or 6 times now, and every time I watch it, I think I like it more than the time before. It's got
and
a red.
20.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, it's
No.
got a red card for violence and for frightening and intense scenes, which makes a lot of sense. There's a couple of kills in that movie that are pretty gruesome and graphic. What were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say, like, this is one of those movies that I feel like I didn't dig Tony Scott's. I don't always dig the way that he had movies edited,
Okay.
but this is one
Yeah.
of those movies where I felt like it really worked for this film.
Okay.
So yeah, like stylistically, it's really awesome compared to some of the other ones that he's done. That I was just, he reminds me a lot with his the way that he does his editing reminds me like of Oliver Stone Light.
Okay. I
Uh,
can see that.
and so like there are times where I'm watching Oliver Stone movies and I'm just like, oh God, why are you editing this way? Like you need to like, and Tony Scott's the same way. Like
I feel
some
like
of his
Michael Mann
movies,
falls in that category also.
maybe yeah,
Like his
but
like Collateral and Miami Vice just had some weird editing that I didn't care for a lot.
and like maybe it was just a style thing that like all of them decided to like, they were like, hey, let's fuck with the audience. Uh, I don't know. It was just very, it's very weird.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
But the editing works in this movie and the style for it. So I don't mind it at all. Maybe everybody was trying to get like a better Michael Bay award than Michael Bay.
I can see
I don't
that.
know.
How
So
do you feel about somebody at 13 seeing the movie?
it depends on what kind of person you're raising
Okay.
or like you're hanging out with. Because like if you're talking about somebody who goes hunting and and I mean that in all actuality, like if you're taking somebody hunting and you guys like, if a dad and a son are going hunting and they're killing animals
Sure.
together and stuff like that, they're going to be a little bit more to it's not going to affect them nearly as much, I
Okay.
would imagine, watching a movie something like this. Whereas like my kids who have, you know do not go hunting
Gotcha.
and can't imagine hurting animals at all, like this is not something that I would show to my 13-year-old kid.
Gotcha. Well, Tyler's next movie that he gave us was when he was 16 years old. I fully support him watching the movie Knocked Up. Knocked Up, 3 red cards: sex and nudity, profanity, and alcohol drug use. All definitely red cards. Green card for no violence or gore. Agree with that. Um, it's got a yellow card for some mild, intense scenes. Maybe the fire at the
Yeah, but
house.
you also got to remember when she's giving birth and you see the crowning. Like, I
Oh,
mean, like,
okay. Okay.
yeah. So, like, I mean, that can be interpreted as intense, and
I'll
that's
give you that.
it's a little much
That
to
is pretty
see.
graphic. But
So,
yeah, this is one that at 16 you're old enough to see this movie. Probably like
oh yeah,
14 you're old enough if you're a guy. I don't know female maturity
maybe
levels, but
Yeah, but I mean, I would imagine anybody at the age of 14 pretty much should be able to handle this.
Sure, but this definitely falls into that dude category of like it's a unattractive dude hooking up with a really hot chick, and then the fallout from them like deciding or ending up having a baby together. So yeah, definitely one for a 16-year-old boy to see for sure. I highly support him sneaking into that movie. Our friend Brandon Yoder tells a story about how when he was 12 years old, he wanted to go watch a movie with that dude from Jurassic Park in it. Have you seen Event Horizon? I can't remember.
I have.
You have, okay.
It's one of the few movies that I absolutely hate.
Oh,
that
really?
I despised the moment I walked out of that auditorium when I saw it, because I had the exact same reaction as Yoder.
I did.
Oh, Sam Neill is in this movie, Dr. Grant.
Yep.
I'm gonna go watch Dr. Grant in a sci-fi space traveling movie. What the fuck am I watching?
So here's what I'll say, because I wasn't a big fan of it back in '97. I was very blah about it. Watch it again, knowing what it is, knowing that it because like I mean, if you like the movie Sunshine, it's literally just it's almost the exact same story as Sunshine, just like a little like it just takes it a little farther and actually includes the going
a
to
lot
hell
darker.
Part. But
a
I mean,
lot
like,
darker.
Yeah, but like a failed spaceship that I just yeah, I would watch it again. I like this movie more having watched it more than just the time I saw it in the theater. Because when I saw it in the theater, I agree with both of you guys. I was seriously like, what am I watching? But like I've watched it 2 or 3 more times since then, and I've liked it more knowing what I'm getting into and seeing the crew and the going in as a psychological study of the people and what they're being put through, and then seeing what happened to the original crew, and like I mean, I highly recommend watching it again if you didn't like it the first time, knowing what you're getting into and being prepared for just this insane journey to hell. Essentially, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, there's so many
said,
other things that I want to see that this isn't going to get a repeat viewing for me. So
that being said, I don't think anybody under 17 needs to see it. Definitely if you're not looking for it's Dr. Grant from Jurassic Park, because that's not what you're gonna get. The red card in violence and gore and the intense scenes are definitely well deserved for this movie. Next up, my friend Jill said that when she was around 11, she rented Sliver, which I unfortunately always consider Sliver the poor man's Basic Instinct, because it came out a year or two after Basic Instinct. I feel like it was a literal attempt to. Sharon Stone was just super sexy in Basic Instinct. Let's find any other sex movie that we can get her to show her breasts in, and I feel like that's what Sliver was. Not that I don't like Sliver, but I always just kind of consider it the poor. I would rather watch Basic Instinct than Sliver.
Wise men say only fools. Anyway, sorry. Yeah. I will totally agree with you. This was just to cash in on the sexiness of Sharon Stone. She knew it. We all knew it. So was The Specialist, if you remember that, with Sylvester Stallone.
Yep.
Like, she's just super smoking hot in that movie too. And I think Sylvester Stallone wrote that one, and it makes me wonder if he like wrote it while he was watching Basic Instinct. It was like, I'm gonna have sex with Sharon Stone in my movie, like, but yeah, Sliver is. I remember writing about Sliver for my freshman. Oh gosh, what's the word I'm looking for here? My freshman speech class with Miss Fisher.
Oh,
like I was writing about the Motion Picture Association of America and like their rating system and stuff, and like and it was like informative or a persuasive speech or something, and it was one of those moments of like I have to tell I want to say I made up a story about my cousin seeing, because like there's a schlong in Sliver. Like there's a point in time where like there's a I want to say maybe a guy's getting out of a bathtub and his thing is just whoa, whoa.
Okay.
And or something along those lines. And so like I was trying to like be like, my cousin saw that and was like, oh, what's this? And made up some I made up some BS just to write a small little story as to why people should be upset that the MPAA didn't make that like NC-17 or X or whatever. But yeah, like it was just that movie's messed up, but some intense sequences in that movie.
Yeah, and like truth be told, like overall the story itself isn't bad, and like it's kind of creepy with him having all the cameras everywhere. Study. Yeah, like an interesting character, a voyeur type movie, like very interesting. But again, like of a lot of Sharon Stone's stuff in that movie, I feel like was only there because it was Sharon Stone from Basic Instinct.
And on top of that, it's like this is not something that somebody under the age of 16 should see.
No, absolutely not.
Like, 16 is pretty much, as far as I'm concerned, 16 should be 17 essentially. So
yeah, I can agree with
that. But yeah, this is something that there's a R for a reason.
The next movie she brought up was the movie Jade. Linda Fiorentino and
David Caruso, right after he walked away from NYPD Blue.
Yeah. I literally have only seen this movie once. I barely remember it. I watched it because it was supposed to be like the super sexy movie or whatever. I honestly think I was 17 when I ended up. I got it from a video store. Pretty sure I was 17 by the time I saw it, and I was very underwhelmed.
I remember, I think I watched it on HBO or something, but yeah, like probably right around the same age as you, and thought it was blah because the movie's just blah.
Yeah, like it's not a great story. It's kind of just bleh. So not I don't remember it enough to say if I think it deserves the R that it got. It probably did. It has 2 red cards for violence and profanity, so I'm sure it earned its R rating. The last one she brought up is Pulp Fiction, which is
saw
super
when I was 12.
Graphic. Okay.
13.
How did you feel about it at that young age?
Because I saw it in the theater.
Okay.
I went. So my brother Michael went. This is a funny side story. So my brother Michael went and saw it without, or with either friends or by himself, whatever the case may be. So he saw it before before the showing I went to. Well, so we're watching this movie, and we're at the Lowe's Cherry Tree.
Okay.
And Michael already seen it. He's on my left, and you hear the dun-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na, and like he is dying laughing. Like, I mean, he's just sitting in his seat and he's like trying to contain his excitement, and like, and David and I looked at each other and look over at Mike, and we're like, what the hell is going on? Why is he acting like this? And then, I'm not kidding you, I figured it out before the door opened.
Oh, okay.
I was like, something really bad is happening behind that door. And then and then I was like, oh no, is he like, and I want to say I remember, or I guess that he was getting taken care of.
Yep.
But I might not have guessed exactly that. But yeah, it was one of those moments of, oh God. And then they opened that door, and it was just like, and here I am. That came out in 94.
Yeah, sounds right. I believe you're right.
So I'm 13 when I'm watching this movie. Now, I will say that when you have 2 older brothers, that with the fact that I was watching R-rated movies at 4, 5, 6 years old with them, and then having their mindsets and the things that they watched and collected and stuff like that in around me, I feel like I was more mature for my age. Okay, and I'm not, and like a lot of my friends were older. Most of my friends, especially from my neighborhood, were at least 1 or 2 years older than me. And so it was just one of those things where like I was guessing things that I probably shouldn't have been guessing at that point in time. So like, yeah, like, So somebody who's got those older brothers and has
Sure.
been exposed to more stuff, that I would think that Pulp Fiction would be fine. There are some messed up
There's a
elements to
lot of
that
messed up
movie.
elements.
But to be completely honest, if you've never seen Pulp Fiction and then you watched it today, I would say that there are major sequences that would make me go damn, or
Sure.
like the whole Marvin sequence,
Yep.
and like that was one of those moments of holy shit. Like
Yeah.
So yeah, like I think this deserves the R rating.
For sure.
I might
Profanity
let somebody
alone.
Oh yeah, but I would probably let somebody who was like 12, 13 watch this if they were mature for their age.
I definitely agree with that. Yeah, I'm sitting here going like, what age would I let Lily watch this? Like, I'd probably push her to like 14, 15. Just like, I don't know.
Which is so strange because my kids, they're 10 and 9, and I'm sitting here and like they've been watching PG-13 superhero movies since Civil War came out, and that was what, that was 6 years ago now.
Yeah, 13, might be 7 years now.
Okay, so they watched Civil War in the theater, and it's like, so here we are, like, you know, thinking of the fact that I took them to that was a little bit much, but yeah, like, yeah, I'm like 4 or 5 years away from showing them.
I know,
like,
right?
Consternate.
All right. So next up, after that, my buddy Garrett gave us quite a few movies, and I have a feeling that these are almost all right up your alley. First up being the first Terminator, which
Badass.
really only has mostly orange cards across the board. So
yeah, and a lot of it's the kills.
Sure.
And there's some profanity in it that would make you like make you cringe a little bit maybe, but nothing horrible. But a lot of it's got to do with the shooting and the violence and like the
Sure.
blood of like when he rips off his arm or whatever, like the skin off of his arm, and I guess that's in part 2. But I mean, like when he gets what was it, when he gets shot in the face and he has to go in and like take out his eyeball or whatever. So like that's some gruesome, gross stuff. If you're not ready for that. So, but I love that movie.
Did Schwarzenegger show his schlong in that?
No.
No. Okay. I couldn't remember if you could see it when he's like walking towards Bill Paxton.
I think maybe you can see it for like a tiny split second. So
his second movie is, oddly enough, Terminator 2.
Saw it opening weekend, Saturday morning.
How old?
So awesome.
Let's see, it came out in 91.
1992. I was 11.
It was 92? Okay.
No, you're right. It was 91.
91? Okay.
It was 91. It was 91, and it was so I was 10. My dad took me to see that. It's one of 2 movies I remember my dad specific. Like we were stuck at home because the rest of the family went out east for a wedding, and so like him and I, we went 2 weekends in a row. One was Naked Gun 2.5.
Okay.
And then the other one was Terminator 2.
That's
and
awesome.
I got to see Terminator 2 on opening weekend, and it was just, for somebody who grew up watching Terminator,
sure.
Dude, Terminator 2, 13 times in the movie theater.
Oh, that's
Between
awesome.
movie theater and drive-in, I think it was 13 times. So I love that movie.
I oddly enough, I would show Lily Terminator 2 before I would ever show her the first Terminator. Like, I don't feel like there's a lot of bad stuff in the second one.
Well, but it's also got the kid in it, so it's kind of like,
sure,
it's toned down a little bit.
Yeah.
I would agree with you that it's probably a little bit easier for a kid to watch than Terminator.
Yeah.
Because it's got the father-son aspect thing going on.
Sure.
There, so it
works.
Like,
I mean, other than profanity, like it doesn't have a single red card. Violence, profanity, and frightening are all oranges, which...
Well, and yeah, I mean, because like when he is fighting, the only one who's showing any damage is the T-1000 for the most part, and he's made out of Jello, so yeah, I think you can get away with that, and it works.
Yeah, I don't see it, and it's a phenomenal movie, so...
Funny, we're sitting here going, that's a family film. Terminator 2 is a family film.
I mean, it might be. Maybe I'll do that this weekend, and I'll report back next week.
Oh, dude, when she hits him in the head with the knife,
and it splits.
Well, he doesn't split, but she hits him right. Yeah, she hits him dead center when he's like the fucking dog, and she's just like,
Oh,
and you
yes, yes,
don't
yes.
see it on camera
Oh,
until it
I'm sorry.
turns.
When Xander Berkeley dies, I thought you were talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah,
I apologize. I thought you were talking about when he gets when T-1000 gets hit down the middle of his head and it
no,
just
no, no.
splits in half.
Yeah, I was thinking of the knife to the
The knife through
forehead,
his
man.
eyeball. Yeah,
Oh, dude.
that's such a great movie.
Yes.
Next up, probably in one of Mark Buckwalter's favorite films of all time, I would have to guess, Hard to Kill.
Oh yeah, definitely. Dude, I watched this movie when I was like 8 years old.
Okay.
Like I remember renting this one. I remember renting it. I had to have been somewhere between 8 and 10. I love this movie, man. Like,
It's a
wait.
lot of fun.
This is Hard to Kill, right?
Yeah,
Steven
Steven
Seagal.
Seagal. Yep.
Okay, I am thinking of the right one.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
take her to the bank, to the blood bank. They must have been smaller than I thought. But yeah, like this movie's a lot of fun for an 80s B.
Of course.
Like it's so good.
Yep.
It's definitely it's like my second favorite Seagal movie of all time that he has a major role in.
Behind Under Siege.
Oh yeah,
Okay,
Under Siege is just the best.
It's amazing. Yeah, I was gonna say.
Die Hard on a boat.
Die Hard on a boat. And then they did Die Hard on a train,
which was not good.
Which was not good. So yeah, Hard to Kill, great movie. Definitely earned its R. I feel like some of the violence and stuff in that's definitely a little much for somebody under 13, 14 maybe. Like so, but after that, it's probably worthwhile. I mean, again, profanity is whatever. But yeah, the violence is kind of violent. But next up, funny you should mention it, Die Hard.
Love that movie.
Absolutely. Definitely watched it before I was 17. Definitely watched it probably more than 17 times before I was 17. Like
this might be one. This is definitely one of those movies for me. That like R rating. It could almost be PG-13. Like don't get me wrong, I like the profanity in the movie, and I think it's it's properly used
for sure.
Compared to PG-13 Part 4 that sucked balls.
Yeah.
Can't stand that freaking film. Even though Timothy Olyphant's awesome in it. But yeah, like
I don't know if I go that far.
He's always awesome, man. Like and it's probably just him.
I mean, I like him a lot, but that character was just terrible. He was as bad as the Bond villain that wanted to take over CNN. Like, his motive was terrible.
I'm totally with you on this, but I just love Timothy Olyphant, so it doesn't matter.
Agree.
But yeah, like this is a movie that I don't think the violence is that bad.
No,
compared to even comparatively to like Hard to Kill, it's not even that bad.
No,
I'll give you the Takaki shot in the head. Is probably the worst of it.
And I mean, you got 2 split seconds of boobs in the scene where they pull the girl out, which haven't when the terrorists take over.
But let's be honest, like if you were showing this to Lily,
I'd show it to her.
Like if you're a girl, like when you show boobs on a screen, it's mainly for the dudes anyway. So the dudes are like, oh, boobs.
I got 2 seconds of boobs.
Oh, so awesome.
Yeah.
But like for the most part, if a girl sees it, she's either thinking, why did they put that in there? Or B, she's like, oh, look. Like it's kind of like us seeing a guy with his shirt off. It doesn't affect us anyway. So I don't know. Maybe I'm not a chick, so maybe I'm wrong. Feel free to comment on this. If any girl hears this boob story, I want to know your take on if boobs are something that offends you when you see it on screen.
But yeah, so I mean, I agree. I would literally show this to Lily at 12. Like, I mean, I don't see anything wrong with it. I think it's a great story. Like I said, the profanity isn't anything outside of what she wouldn't normally hear in the real world. So, the sex and nudity listed as mild. Like I said, there's only that one scene. Real quick.
Can I tell you that there are so many movies that I am so looking forward to watching with my boys? To be able to watch Predator and Die Hard and Alien.
So let me ask you this. A movie like Die Hard, are you going to wait for both boys to be age appropriate, or will you show it to one before you show it to the other?
I think Chris has got a more mature mind than Nicholas does. So, and Nick's the older one, but it's just the way that Chris is wired compared to Nick.
It's a 2-year difference?
It's
1 year.
15 months.
15, okay.
So yeah, like it's definitely something that I'd be more okay with showing to Christopher probably faster than I would be to Nick.
Okay.
So,
So they
but
will
yeah,
probably watch it at the same time with you.
probably.
Probably. That's awesome. That'll be a good family night. Do it
Dude,
in your driveway.
I was gonna say there's so many movies I want to do in my driveway with like for people in the neighborhood where it's like forget the kids, let's put on Predator.
There you go. And then in 20 years, some kid's gonna be doing a podcast about how his neighbor showed Predator on his driveway, and he watched the entire movie in binoculars from across the street.
It's not gonna be a podcast. It's gonna be a holographic image with this kid's like floating head, like talking about this story. And somehow he's gonna have like video footage that he can pull from his memory, so it's gonna actually show you what he was looking at through the binoculars.
Oh, that would be crazy. But yeah. So next up, Garrett threw out The Shining, which is intense, but as long and like you've said before, if a person at 13 or 14 was psychologically adult enough to handle it, I wouldn't have a problem showing it to them.
Oh, absolutely. But like I had a story. We were having a birthday party for one of my kids or some other kid, like family wise. And it was like a 1-year-old or 2-year-old's birthday party. And a family member came in and turned on The Shining.
At your house?
At my house.
During a birthday party?
It was like right before everybody arrived. But yes, for a 1 or 2-year-old's birthday party, turn The Shining on to the television. And once said person left the room, we turned it off and then hid all the remotes so that it wouldn't become a problem again. But yeah, that was one of those moments of what the fuck are you doing? And like this person doesn't censor much in their own house, which is fine because they're older and they don't need to.
Yeah.
But it's also their house. Like I can't even imagine walking into like especially with somebody who has younger kids. Like I can't walk into I can't walk into Joe Langlis's house and be like, I'm gonna put on porn.
Right?
Like it's like that's okay right now, right? Like we're only gonna have a 2-year-old birthday party soon. Like yeah, it was totally messed up. It was one of those moments where like yeah, I turned it off and then I told my wife and she was like, she went and grabbed all the remotes and like put them away so nobody could find them for the rest of the party.
Do you know what the weird thing about The Shining is I will say with The Shining, probably like 70 to 80% of the movie is like literally just okay for any age person to watch.
Yes.
Like there's a lot of it that's just family time or like weird stuff like but that 30%, maybe 25% that's like not appropriate is really not appropriate. Like it really like I said,
totally agree.
A lot of the movies just kind of like hum-de-dum-de-dum. We're in this abandoned hotel. I'm gonna ride my bike. And even the bike riding scene, I guess, ends pretty creepy. But like, there's just a lot of that movie that is kind of boring.
Just creepy. It's not like there's anything that really happens at that point in time.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, they're weird, but. Yeah.
But then there's some scenes, the blood from the elevator and like the dead girls and like the chase scene near the end of the movie. Like there's some stuff that gets like no, like kids shouldn't watch that.
The old lady in the bathtub.
The old lady in 237. Yep. Yeah. There's like I said, a lot of it's just kind of like ho hum, and then it just goes 180 for the other parts.
I saw that when I was really young. But like I said, nothing was out of bounds for me. So
sure,
I was really young. I was younger than 10 easily.
I probably didn't see it till 19. I went through a big Kubrick phase around 18, 19. I probably saw it somewhere around there. I was definitely over 17 when I saw it. Predator is Garrett's next movie he threw out there. You've mentioned it already in this conversation.
Dude, it's so awesome. Such a great movie. The violence though is top notch.
And that's the only red card that it got was for violence.
Like the fact that people are getting skinned, the fact that you're seeing skulls getting ripped out of people, the fact that some people's body parts blowing off of their bodies, like It's fantastic, and I do recommend the 3D version if you have a 3D Blu-ray player and TV. The 3D conversion was really well done on that.
That
So
wasn't released ever in 3D though, right?
no, it was just a Blu-ray release.
Okay.
When Blu-ray was going through its like biggest thing, blow up on home video stuff. Yeah, I ended up buying it, and the 3D conversion is really good,
Nice.
and I really like, especially like the sequence where the mask comes off
Oh
and
yeah,
it's like
okay.
zoomed in on just his face, and he's like motherfucker, or he doesn't say that until the second one, sorry, but
Right. Yeah.
when he calls him "you're an ugly motherfucker," and then it, like his eyes open, but it's like it's nothing but his. It's like this close, and like you're seeing the depth of all
Nice.
of the things, and it was a really cool moment. So
I will say this. This is my Predator story. Predator is a movie that I saw the TV version first. I had watched it on TV for the first time on Fox, I think it was, if I remember the
like
commercials.
it's like Clerks on TV, like
Yeah, it
so
was
much
it
stuff
was
missing.
it was one of those ones where like I watched it on TV and I'm like, all right, this is a pretty cool movie. Like I like Predator. That's a good story. Okay. And then a couple years later, when I was older and was able to watch the R-rated version myself, I went, wow, this is way better than I knew it was. But yeah, that's one of the movies that I definitely saw the TV version first, and then I had to wait a couple of years to learn how good the real version of the movie was. The
Love that movie.
next one we've got a long story from Jason Richardson. I'll try to paraphrase it a little bit. This movie was also on Garrett's list, but I left it off Garrett's list for the simple fact that Jason had this big story about how when he was 5 years old, his mother couldn't get a babysitter, so she took him with her to watch the movie Halloween at the Glendale 123 cinemas. He remembers that he watched it in Cinema 2. He remembers the experience all these years later and how terrified he was. He ran out of the theater multiple times, which I'm kind of baffled at the fact that his mom just kept taking him back in there. But okay. He remembers multiple scenes from the movie, multiple kills from the movie when he was a kid. It bothered him so much that when the his family got the monthly HBO guide to let you know what was coming and like when new stuff was debuting on HBO, he talks about how they got it and it had Michael Myers on the front of it, and he ripped up the entire magazine because of the fact that it had Michael Myers on the front of it. He was so terrified by Michael Myers. Um, but then he admits that about 10 years later, right before he went to college, he forced himself to sit down and watch the movie again, and it has literally become his favorite film ever since he watched it that second time. He discusses the fact that the memories of how much it terrified him as a child compared to how much he appreciated it the next time that he watched it made it turned it into it what started out as the worst movie experience ever turned into the best movie experience and film of all time. At the end of the day, simplicity made it effective. So that's a great story about Halloween. And the only red card it got was for frightening and intense scenes, which I find interesting because it definitely shows PJ Soul's breasts in that movie. Like,
Yeah,
and
but
not like a flash, it
it's
shows them.
but like besides that, like, do you remember much violence in that movie? Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, there are kills,
There are
but
kills.
there's nothing that's like, dude, like that movie is super tame
I'll give you. Oh yeah, I'll agree
for a
with that.
horror movie, like especially considering what else came out around that time. Like, I'd have to say, like, obviously you want somebody to be older and mature, but I would say that this could be something as easily as 12, 13 years old because it's nothing, it's not that bad in my opinion. So
I feel like, and I don't know if this makes it deserve an R rating, but I feel it's like some of the scenes are very intense. Like even the scene, the escape at the beginning of the movie from the asylum when the nurse is driving her car. Like it's not scary really, but it's a very tense
oh,
sequence.
absolutely, but I don't think that that makes it that hard of an R.
No, I know
Like,
I'll definitely agree with that. Um,
so I mean, don't get me wrong, it's rated R for a reason.
Sure.
But I would definitely say that this is like a soft R. I don't feel like, because even the killing at the beginning of the movie, since it's shot the way that it was, there's nothing like overly gruesome about it or gross. Nope. Like when he kills the boyfriend by
picking him up and stabbing him into the wall.
Picking him up and stabbing him to the wall. Like, I mean, there's like no blood from that whatsoever. Like, he sticks him and then he's just sitting there looking at him. And like, that's it, man. Like, there's not a whole lot of gruesomeness to that movie. So, which is fine. And in the simplistic aspect of it, it works really well for the movie. But yeah, this is definitely a soft R in my opinion.
I agree. Like, when I was talking about intense scenes, I was thinking about stuff like after he kills Bob and then he goes upstairs with the sheet over him and Bob's glasses. Like, the tenseness of that, again, does not make it worthy of an R rating, but it's definitely what makes that movie so good.
And and I don't know if you feel this way, but like, this would seem like, to me, like a perfect movie for Lily.
Yeah.
Like because of the fact that it's not overly gruesome.
Nope. It's very tense, I definitely feel like scary.
They took the gruesome up many levels in like later versions of Halloween,
right, especially like H2O, because that was what was popular at that point.
The stuff that's more popular in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
But like, for a horror movie, this is very tame. Yeah. And like this and like the first Friday the 13th wasn't horrible in my opinion. There's some kills and there's some stuff, but I don't think of it. I guess maybe because of the fact that we've been tailored with what we've been shown lately as far as horror. But like Friday Nightmare on Elm Street, like that's a movie like hell no.
No, yeah.
Like the stabbings, the Johnny Depp exploding bed. Yeah, like dude, it's one of those moments where you're like, no, that's too intense.
Mm-hmm.
That would be too gross. But I think that I could get away with showing Halloween to somebody Lily's age, if they're, obviously everybody knows their own kid, or hopefully knows their own kid well enough.
And I mean, I'm at the point that I would show it to her if she said she was ready for it. If she was like, I want something that's intense and is gonna scare me, I would have no problem showing it to her. Like I said, we showed her Happy Death Day, and none of being PG-13, there's still quite a bit stabbings in it, and there's still some murders and kills in it and whatnot. So like,
only PG-13?
Yeah, it's PG-13, man.
Wow.
Yeah, both of them.
I can think of 2 PG-13 horror movies that I like.
Yeah. So like, Happy Death Day, PG-13, and there's some pretty bloody stabbings and stuff in that movie. But yeah, if Lily told me that she really wanted something that I thought would psychologically scare her, I would have no problem showing her Halloween right now. Jason Richardson's next film, much like Garrett, Jason Richardson gave us a good plethora of films to talk about, is a movie I honestly don't know if I've ever seen the whole thing. The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas.
I know I watched it when I watched the R-rated version when I was younger, when it came out pretty much. It was something that got played a lot in my house. I always thought it was funny. Like my parents and my older brothers would laugh at it a lot, so that made me want to watch it more. So I know I watched it like unprompted by other people, by myself a few times, but I also had boobies in it. And when you're a young kid, you're like, oh, boobies, I get to watch boobies.
Well, and like, that's funny because on the Parents Guide, the sex and nudity is the only thing that even got orange on here. Everything else is green and yellow.
Yeah, like it's very tame.
Much. But yeah, like I said, I don't really remember the movie very well at all, but I couldn't tell you anything in it that deserved to be rated R other than apparently there is nudity in it. Next was a movie called The Accused, which I don't believe I've ever seen, but when I read
Isn't that Jodie Foster?
Jodie Foster. When I looked it up and read the description, it's one that I think sounds interesting, but I have not seen this movie. It has 4 out of 5 red cards. So...
Okay, so The Accused, the whole purpose of it, like Meg Ryan? No, it's Jodie Foster.
Yeah, Jodie Foster and
Kelly McGillis.
Yes.
So Kelly McGillis plays a lawyer, and she is prosecuting some people because of a rape that happened to Jodie Foster.
Right.
The rape that happens to Jodie Foster was considered, I would imagine that's still considered graphic.
Okay.
But when it came out, which was the late 80s, I want to say, it was not something like this movie got a lot of press because of how messed up it was that they showed a rape.
Was it a gang rape? Because it sounds like there was multiple guys involved.
Yeah, yeah. It's like 4 or 5 guys who are drunk at a bar.
Okay.
And they end up doing the raping her on a pinball machine, and it's yeah. I remember.
But then it sounds like there's some vigilante stuff that goes on.
That's 1988. I remember it being something that a lot of people were like traumatized by.
Oh, okay.
Like probably like bringing up past experiences of themselves,
okay,
but like watching it and being truly disturbed by the film. So like it got a lot of press, and it was really messed up from that aspect. So, and I was trying to think of what was the movie that recently did something along the same lines, or like the trauma from watching. I'll try to remember that.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you're talking about. But does it become like a vigilante thing? Like the little brief description I read kind of sounds like, I don't know which one of them, but it kind of made it sound like one of the two of them goes off and starts like fucking up these guys.
I want to say that the guys who are accused of raping her end up like falling off, like getting killed one by one. And you're not sure who's doing it.
Oh, okay.
Like it could be like multiple people, so gotcha. Like it's kind of like a whodunit, who's getting the revenge. And I remember watching it when it came out, I want to say, or at least when it hit HBO, but I don't remember the ending very well. So
it was one that when I read it, I was like, oh, I should look into watching this, and I unfortunately didn't do it before tonight, but I think at some point I'm going to try to find this movie and see if I can watch it. Next one from Jason Richardson is one that I know you really like. I really like it as well. Bachelor Party. Lots of fun.
I definitely should not have been watching this when I was 6 years old, 7 years old.
I remember lots of sex and nudity.
Dude, this was a staple in my house.
Okay.
Like my brother Michael and I would watch Bachelor Party all the time. I can quote so many lines from the movie. It's one of those things where like the nudity like might have been the reason why you watched it the first time.
Sure.
But like it is not the reason why I've seen it over 100 times. Like it's because of Tom Hanks. It's because of his comedic timing. Like this movie it's
wild.
Dude, this movie's one of the best comedies of all time.
It's great.
For me.
Sure.
It's so
I'll agree with that.
But yeah, not showing it to any of my children before 16, 17 years old. They don't.
Yeah, it's wild. Like it is a fun ride. I was probably 16, 17, somewhere around there the first time I saw it. So yeah, it was a blast. I remember really having a good time with it. And I'll agree with you. Like, I think the first few times I watched it being 16 was like, oh, it's a lot of like nudity and crazy sex stuff. And then like as I got older and watched it more, I'm like, this movie is just really good despite that.
Absolutely.
I will completely agree with your assertion on that. His next movie was The Fog, which
never seen it.
It's a good horror movie. It was Jamie Lee Curtis post Halloween. People were just casting her in Halloween ripoffs. I enjoy the movie. I don't know. I'd probably show it to Lily whenever after she watched Halloween. Like, I don't remember anything in it being that bad. It has no red cards. So yeah, it was just a creepy movie. I don't really remember anything terrible about it or why it would be rated R.
They made a PG-13 version of it, and that version sucked. It was Thomas Jane was in it, Maggie Grace, I think.
Yeah.
It was the early 2000s. It was a really bad movie. I do not recommend that one. Yeah. I have not seen this R-rated version.
Yeah, the original is, if you're looking for a good classic horror film, it's worth watching. it the end of it goes a much more supernatural route than you would expect. Um, the next up is The Howling, which I think I've only ever seen once and don't really
Never
remember
seen it.
much of it. I think it came out in like 90 or 85, 84, somewhere around there. I honestly only watched it because it was referenced in Scream, and because of my obsession with anything related to Scream, I had to watch the movie. And so I watched it probably like 96, 97,
I
somewhere
know it
around.
was a werewolf, but that's
Yeah,
all I know.
it's blah. I don't remember enough about it to know why it was rated R. Beverly Hills Cop, a fantastic cop movie. Um, very let's see. The only red card's profanity. Most everything else is orange. Um, yeah, it's kind of like that. Like I'm trying to think like between that and like Lethal Weapon. Like, was there anything like? I guess it's just really the profanity. Like even the violence in any of those cop movies from the '80s wasn't really that bad.
Even Bad Boys, like Bad
Or
Boys,
yeah,
like it's not the content. It's not
no,
anything besides the profanity.
yeah,
Like
they
that's the only thing that's keeping it from being, and which is fine. I
yeah,
mean,
because you got to keep stuff like that real. Like we all know cops cuss. Like I get it.
yeah.
So yeah, Beverly Hills Cop definitely. I mean, I doubt Lily would ever be like, I want to watch Beverly Hills Cop. So probably not gonna have to worry about that. What age ish do you think you'd show your boys that?
13, 14.
Right on,
Like,
I can see that because it is pretty funny. Also, like on top of being like a profanity cop movie, like it's got a lot of humor in it.
well, and I'm guessing that probably by my oldest is now going into intermediate school, which is like fifth grade.
Okay,
He's in fifth grade right now. So it's one of those things to me where like this is that time frame. I remember for me personally, like using cuss words was something that started right around fifth grade and
sure.
like all the way to middle school. So like fifth to eighth grade, I had to like make sure my parents didn't hear me cuss, but I thought it was the coolest thing.
Sure.
And we'd be cussing each other out all the time, hanging out and saying bad words.
Lily came up to me the other day and she was talking about her internet at school. And she goes, yeah, our internet connection at school is just shit. And then just like kept talking. And I said, wait, stop. Did you just say your internet at school is shit? And she said, yeah. I said, I just want to make sure I heard you right. Keep going. But I was just like,
so
that's the first time I've ever heard her just use that word in like in conversation with me. And I was like, I just want to make sure I heard you right.
yeah, so I mean, like once your kids are using profanity and you know about it, you might
Yeah.
not be like, oh, now you can watch Beverly Hills Cop, Bad Boys, and Lethal Weapon. But I mean, like if it's just profanity,
Sure.
like we've watched Goonies, and Goonies has a few shits and
Yep.
dams and stuff like that, and it's one of those moments of heck, they even use it in they use bad language very few times, but in Marvel movies. So
yeah.
like
Yep.
my kids know that these words exist. They know that they're adult words.
Are we going to address the fact that Cap just said language?
but so it's just one of those things to me. Like once I know my boys are using it, then I'd be more inclined to be like, hey, you and I can go watch. We'll sneak away and watch this movie and enjoy it without your younger sister or brother around. So.
Sure. Jaybird's next movie is the exact same category. 48 Hours, pretty much the exact same thing.
That in years.
Yeah,
like probably 30 years.
Oh wow. Okay, yeah, like it's just language in it. Like I don't really remember there being a whole lot else bad about 48 Hours. Jaybird's last movie was Child's Play, which I'm surprised that this is rated R, to be honest.
Yeah.
I just when I watched
the profanity.
Yeah, the last time I watched it was last October, like almost a year ago now, because when it gets to be October, I just watch horror / whatever slasher movies for the entire month, and I watched it last year, and I can't think of. I mean, there's not really any super gruesome kills.
No, and on top of that, the most gruesome kill is Chucky himself, right? Like
yeah,
getting shot, and you seeing his blood splatter behind the wall.
You know?
Like that's probably the most gruesome. But
And that's
that
on a
movie is
doll.
disturbed.
What was that?
That movie is disturbed.
It is. Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I don't know if I would show that. Maybe 13, 14 years old. Like,
Yeah, like
maybe 11. Maybe you could get away with it 11. But, like, it's just one of those things to me that's just like, I don't know.
it was just thinking about it, like I can't think of anything that I'd be like, oh, I don't want Lily to see that. Like, there's nothing bad in it that I can think of. Next up is this is a weird part of childhood. I'm interested to hear your story. Mine's, I mean, not that exciting, but I know which one I watched first. My buddy Joshua said Faces of Death. The best part about Faces of Death is he went on to say that they used to hide them in SNES boxes, which is the most brilliant hiding place I've ever heard of that I've never thought of for hiding stuff like that. Have you ever seen any of the? Did you watch Faces of Death when you were younger?
We did.
Okay, cool.
To find out later that some of them were like, it was like half fake and half real.
Half real. Yep.
And like the one that I remember the most was, it was a beheading that looked like it took place in a Middle Eastern country or something.
Okay.
And it was like, and it was literally this guy hunched over on he's sitting, like he's kneeling and his head's out frontwards. And like the narrator said something along the lines of like, to this day, we still don't know what he did. And then you just saw the guy just come down and his head just roll. And it was just one of those moments where you're just like, I don't like, Faces of Death is messed up, man.
It
like
is
the fact that somebody made like 10, 12 volumes of that, and like it used to get rented all the time at the video store. The video store was constantly out of them. And but you know what's even worse is, here I was like 8, 9 years old, 10 years old, and going, oh, let's rent Faces of Death. Like, we used to rent it when we would have slumber parties in the neighborhood.
Really?
Like, like, not a good choice.
I had to look into it because I remembered the box art from the first one that I watched at a friend's house. It was Faces of Death 4. It had the multiple skulls on it. And then when I pulled it for this, I found out that it had 2 tigers on it also. And I don't ever remember, like, I don't remember there's probably tigers in some segment of it, and I just don't remember it. But like, looking at the box art, I'm like, I don't know if I ever knew that those were tigers and not just more skulls that were on the front.
I think I remember. All I remember is like a picture, like a cartoon drawing of like Death himself.
Yep,
and
that
like,
was
like
2 or 3, I think.
He's like this or something. He's got his sickle next to him.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that's the only thing I can remember from the box art. But yeah, messed up movies.
They were definitely messed up. In this last week, while getting ready for tonight's episode, I definitely read a lot of the trivia about Faces of Death, and like the real stuff was whatever they could get their hands on, like, you know, news footage or like anything that they were able to get their hands on. But all the stuff that they faked, I find I find it really awesome. Like, there are some of the things, like there's an electrocution that they literally filmed in some guy's like house, and I would highly recommend, like, for filmmaking interested people, to read a lot of the trivia and behind the scenes stuff of Faces of Death and how the guy that created it, like, it was literally just him and his friends buying random shit at stores, and crap, I can't remember all the details of it, but apparently in one of them, it was supposed to be these people that were eating monkey brains, like, that you supposedly got to watch them like beat open a monkey's head and then like pull out.
That.
Yeah, like that was 100% fake, and like just filmed in somebody's like garage or something. And like the story of the, like, it was obviously like a fake monkey prop that they had bought, and like all the stuff that they bought, and it was like it wasn't Jello, but like, oh crap, what was it? I can't remember what it was for brains, but they literally like had some type of food that they just put a bunch of red corn syrup on top of to look like blood while they were eating it and whatnot. And I'm just like, as gross as it was when I was like 13 years old watching it, like, knowing practical effects for filmmaking now, like, I'm kind of intrigued by it, and I'm like, these guys were just like doing 5-minute ridiculous shit that was, gory and gruesome, but it was literally just them expressing their art. And so,
Yeah.
like, the stuff that was faked, I'm like, that's pretty cool for these. I think they were all like 20 years old making these movies and whatnot, and I'm like, that's kind of cool for them.
And they made
But
a heck of bank on that.
oh yeah, I can't even imagine how much money they made off these things, because they were definitely. I became aware of them when I was like 13 and like seventh grade or whatnot, and they were talked about a lot amongst my friends.
Yep.
Next up, Tim Pendleton brought up the Amityville Horror, which you haven't seen it.
I think I saw the remake and never saw the original.
The Ryan Reynolds remake.
Yeah.
Gotcha. The original's creepy. I just, but it's like creepy. I don't remember anything in it that like deserves an R rating for it. I'm trying to remember. Is Poltergeist rated R?
I thought it was PG 13. Okay. I thought that was one of the movies that originated the PG 13.
That originated, okay. Because like I feel like I would put this around like the Poltergeist type movie. Like I don't really remember. It's a very creepy movie, and a lot of like weird shit happens.
Poltergeist is PG.
Is PG. There you go. Like, yeah, like I just.
The second one was 13.
I can't really remember anything from watching the original Amityville Horror that like would constitute it being R-rated. I got no red cards, moderate violence and moderate frightening and intense stuff. Like it's just a really creepy movie. I don't know. I'm not sure why that one ended up with an R rating. We are now finally able to talk about, or I mean, we talked about it earlier, but we're talking about Alien, which was Tim's second movie that he got to see before he was 17. Let's see. Amityville, his sister took him to see it, and then when he saw Alien, he was able to buy tickets at the Art Craft in Franklin without getting carded when they tried to buy tickets. So, yeah. And again,
did they even card back then? Like,
I don't know.
mean, seriously.
It was definitely a different time in the movie business.
Alien is, like we talked about a little bit ago, is definitely one of those movies where you might be able to get away with it. There are him popping out, like the alien popping out of the chest is a little much. Yeah. Some of the kills I don't remember the kills being very bloody.
No, not really. That was probably the most bloody part of the whole movie.
Yeah, it's definitely more along the lines of like everything being very tense.
Yes. And as we've said on previous podcasts well before this, Alien is definitely in the not horror genre, but in the like psychological like genre. Like it's definitely a much more tense and like thinking movie than like the second one, which is much more closer to a horror film.
Yeah.
So now we are going to move on to I've got 3 movies to tell some quick stories about that were not brought up by anybody else in this. The first story I have goes to The Toxic Avenger. This is probably predates Faces of Death by a little bit. I do know I was in 7th grade the first time I saw this, and it was one of those ones where like I rode my bike around with some certain friends and whatnot. We ended up over at somebody's house. We were, it was just after school, hanging out, doing whatever, and my buddy was like, "Hey, who wants to watch The Toxic Avenger?" And the weird thing was I had already seen the Toxie TV series at this point that they had done.
The cartoon?
The cartoon, yeah. So I was like, "Oh yeah, like let's watch the Toxic Avenger movie. Like, oh, let's see where this cartoon came from." I had no idea what I was getting getting into. So a lot of the boobs that I got to see in that, a lot of the violent, very gory deaths that I saw in that.
Never seen this movie.
You've never seen The Toxic Avenger?
Nope.
Oh, dude. Of all the stuff you watched when you were 8 years old, this should have been one of them. It's not a good movie. It's a trauma film. It's a bad movie, but much like The Room, it's fun to watch because of how bad it is. Being being that we did independent film, I think you'll appreciate what they were able to do with obviously no budget and a bad script and not good actors. You get to see quite a bit of boobs, and you get to see quite a bit of violent, uber violent murders in the movie. Like, I would recommend it, but not for somebody who's like 12 years old. Like, I probably shouldn't have been watching it at 13, but it is what it is. Um, so that's my Toxic Avenger story. Definitely saw it and was like, that's the first movie that I remember going like, wow, that's like a lot of boobs in a movie, and oh wow, like that's a really violent death in this movie, and not being prepared for it in any way. The next one was a video. So I'm going to go way old school here. The supermarket Marsh used to have a little video section, and you'd have your little Marsh video card, and it was always in my parents' name, and it had authorized users on it, and it had ages attached to the authorized users. So a lot of times I would attempt to rent R-rated movies, and then they would ask, so what's your name? And I would be like, I'm Shane. And they're like, ooh, well, this is rated R, and on here it says you're only allowed to rent PG-13 movies. This was the first one that I got away with. Whoever was working that night at Marsh's video rental store did not ask me what my name was, just probably put it under my dad's name. I got to rent from dusk till dawn and go home and watch that. And I mean, let's be honest, like, I mean, I was like 15. Like, it's not like I was like way underage to be watching.
Not like you were 8.
Right. So like, but this was the first one where I was underage, and the person renting it to me just didn't care, didn't ask my age, and allowed me, a 15-year-old, to go home with an R-rated movie. Totally lied to my parents about what I rented. Totally didn't like let them, come downstairs that night when I was watching it. But I watched it in our basement on, I assume, probably a Friday night. Friday nights were a lot of the nights that we would go to Marsh to get movies and shop or whatever. Probably because it was payday, now that I think about it. But yeah, so From Dusk Till Dawn was the first one that I got to watch that I rented without being like carded for renting it or anything like that. And then my last story, the one that you've possibly heard, but you've heard 100 times. Anybody listening to this has probably heard it before on a previous episode. It was December of 1996. I walked into Clearwater. I had my pager in my hand. I was only 16 years old. I walked up to the 7 through 12 side of Clearwater. I had my pager in my hand, and I said to the ticket taker, hey, I just got a page from somebody. I need to go use the payphone real quick. And they said, yeah, sure, go ahead and go use it. Because the payphones were directly outside of Cinema 7. I had already seen that the midnight show of Scream was in Cinema 7. Or, I'm sorry, not midnight. It was like a 10:20 or something like that show. I walked over, picked up the phone, fake dialed, kept my eye on the ticket taker. As soon as he had people come up to him and was busy ripping their tickets, hung up that phone, jetted into Cinema 7, ended up watching Scream that night on opening weekend. And that was my favorite movie going experience. Probably was watching Scream for the first time when I was 16 and technically shouldn't have been in there. Didn't pay for it. Totally ripped off money from the company I later worked for. But yeah, those are my 3 under 17 R-rated stories that I had that I like. You've got 3 for us now.
Which one did I give you first?
RoboCop.
So, yeah, we kind of talked about it already. Yep. 6.5 years old, 1987, the summer of 1987. And for those who have not seen RoboCop, absolutely not okay for a kid under the age. I should have been 14, 15 at least, or actually 17. But yeah, like
dude, his movie, murder alone at the beginning of the movie, they destroy his body.
Yeah, like you've got the freaking the shot behind his hand when his hand disintegrates from the shotgun. The guy who gets drenched in toxic chemicals and then ends up getting hit by the car and literally just dissolves.
Yep.
Like the guy getting shot in the penis, dude, like there is a whole lot wrong with that movie. that I absolutely love.
Sure.
I think it's an awesome movie. It's weirdly accurate how it's working out.
Oh, for sure.
If you haven't seen the meme for it, then find it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like that movie, definitely not something, along with Predator, should not have been seen by a 6.5-year-old boy. But it
I
is
feel
what
like
it
it turned
is.
out all right. The next one you gave me was Revenge of the Nerds.
Revenge of the Nerds. To think of the fact that I was looking at Bush when
Full frontal nudity in that movie.
yeah, I mean, Booger sitting there going Bush, Bush. Like, I mean, like the fact that I was watching that when I was like 4 or 5 years old, like, you know, there's just certain things. I did watch
There's
that
some things in
movie.
this movie that don't hold up in society now. Like, when,
And I think I was about to bring it up
go
with
ahead.
what you were going to say. Like, there, he literally rapes the
He
girl at the end of the
literally
movie.
rapes her.
Like she thinks he's somebody else.
Yep.
He keeps the mask on.
Yep.
He has sex with her.
Yep.
And after they're done having sex, she sees that it's him, and she doesn't care.
She doesn't care. It's so bizarre.
She cares for like a split second, and then she goes, "Wait, are all nerds like you?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, all of us are like me." It's like,
and she
hey,
like compliments him. She's like, "Oh well, you were pretty good."
One, no, probably not all nerds are the same, and B, like how, like, you can't. I don't know. Like, it's just one of those moments where when I watched it again recently within the last year or two, and that was the thing that stood out, was like, this woman was just raped and she's okay with it,
right? Like, yeah, that's a really awkward thing.
You know that movie was written by a man.
Oh, for sure.
Like, and don't get me wrong, like, it's still funny and silly and ridiculous, and it's got all sorts of people in it that go on to have big careers afterwards.
Timothy Busfield,
John Goodman's the coach.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Anthony Edwards.
And then who's the other guy? David Carradine. David Carradine's in it, isn't he?
I don't remember if he was or not.
I think David Carradine's in it.
But still, like, the movie is not appropriate for somebody
not at all
so young. This was definitely, I think it might be raunchier than Porky's due to the fact that it has a rape sequence in it. Even though it's not really set up as a rape sequence. But
it's one of those hindsight things. Like, obviously, probably nobody had a problem with it in '85 or whatever. Like,
yeah.
But looking back on it, like, with how society has evolved and stuff since then, like that's definitely always been kind of like awkward when I've watched it in the last like 10 years.
Yeah, very strange.
So, of all the movies we've talked about tonight, of every movie that we have gone through, Kids and maybe like one or two other movies have come close with 4 red cards. But there's always been one category where it's just like, nah, this category's not that bad. But we saved the best for last because Jason picked a movie with 5 red cards. Every category,
Jackpot, baby.
Every category is considered severe as far as the Parents' Guide goes for Basic Instinct.
Dude, like, don't get me wrong, like, Paul Verhoeven, we've mentioned it on other things, he's a really good director, but he's got some really weird, intense things about him.
For sure.
Yeah, Basic Instinct is really quite gross. It takes who knows, maybe this was the birth of gore porn. He does some really gross kills in this movie that with the ice pick, but it's also got it's got really bad language, which again, we've talked about that's not that big of a deal, but you take that with the intense killings, and then you also have the extreme nudity, like in extreme, like, I mean, Sharon Stone showing her vag, like the sex sequences that happen in the movie. It's just very.
To bring that up, we have a borderline rape sequence in this also between Michael Douglas and Jean Triplehorn.
Yes.
Where watching that scene, you're not really sure if she's consenting to what he's doing to her. Like the look on her face, like as that camera is like going pushing in on him, like the look on her face almost says, "I'm not okay with this." Like, so it's a it. I don't think anybody's ever come out and said either way whether that's actually a rape scene, but like it kind of feels like one when you watch it.
Well, yeah, and we've talked about Verhoeven doing that in almost every single one of his movies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know again if this is something that he does so that it takes more power away from it and gives more power to the women, like showing it. I don't know. I have no idea why he would find this so satisfying to put in his movies, because a lot of times it ends up being something that's very uncomfortable and very gross. um but like he's got the rape sequence in Hollow Man, he's got the rape
Yep.
sequence in Black Book, he's got the rape sequence in
What's Black Book? I'm drawing a blank on what Black Book is.
it was the German film. It was about a girl who was undercover, was working against the Nazis even though she was in the Nazi party.
Okay.
And yeah, like, yeah, it came out in like 06. I want to say 06, 07, but it's all German, and it's all takes place while she's intertwined with the Nazis and trying to it's storyline kind of similar to like the storyline of Inglourious Bastards, how she kind of gets herself entangled. I'm sorry, the orphan from the beginning gets herself gets entangled with the Nazis at the end.
Gotcha.
And she, where she's befriending them or whatever. But yeah, like this, so he does a lot of Showgirls. He did it in Showgirls. It's just very gross and uncomfortable. And like, I've never, maybe I should watch an interview with him and see why he does that. I'm sure somebody has had to have asked him that, but yeah, like just very weird to me. Like, but anyway, people like to imitate art or imitate life with art. So
earlier tonight, you and I had a conversation before we started recording about how I'm getting to the point where Caitlin and I have been talking to Lily about R-rated movies, especially now that she's shown interest in the like horror genre and whatnot. And we talked about some movies that, first of all, I didn't realize were rated R, and some things that we don't think should be rated R. And the first one was when Lily said, well, a couple of days ago, I had a conversation with her knowing that this episode was coming up, and I said, have you seen any R-rated movies? Because I literally didn't know. And she was like, yeah. And I'm like, whoa, really? Like, what have you already seen that's rated R? And she said to me, The Matrix. And I was like, The Matrix is only PG-13. And then my wife got on her phone and pulled it up and showed me that I was wrong, and The Matrix is actually rated R. And I would literally show Lily The Matrix now at 12. Like, I can't think of any possible reason other than, I guess, profanity that The Matrix would be rated R.
It's got some, profanity is pretty much probably the only reason. But like something like Speed is the same thing.
Sure. Yeah, Speed. I chose Speed.
Literally, the worst thing that happens is when Dennis Hopper loses his head at the end of the movie. Like, that's pretty much the worst. So they use they use profanity, but like if somebody's already hearing it, then it's not going to be that bad for them.
No.
Oh man, I so had one earlier in my brain, and I was like, I need to remember this. And I thought about writing it down, and I didn't.
You should have written it down.
Well, Aliens is another one. Like,
Aliens is the second one?
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of gross stuff in that movie. The worst part is that maybe at the end when Bishop gets ripped in half, but he's a synthetic android, so he's like he's not real. So you might get away with it there. But yeah, that like Aliens was one that I was like, man, that's not nearly as bad as I would have thought it was. So
so she also mentioned to me that she'd seen John Wick, which is one that I wouldn't really show to a 12-year-old, but I mean, whatever. I feel like it's pretty graphic and a lot of blood and a lot of executions, and I mean, as amazing of a movie as it is, I'm just kind of like, I'm not sure you were old enough to watch that. She's also seen the movie Us, which there's not really a whole lot in that is like, when she told me that, I was like, oh, all right, well, like, I don't really remember much in that. Like, there's some creepy stuff, but nothing that I was like, oh, I don't think you should see that.
Yeah.
And then
Get Out is PG-13, isn't it? Or is Get Out
Get
rated
Out's
R?
R also. Yeah, they're both R.
Okay.
The last one obviously is like my wife has shown it to her numerous times, and I fully support it. Is The Breakfast Club. Like, movie's amazing. There's no reason why kids shouldn't watch that. Like, it's real life. Language is. I mean, there's drug use, but I mean, whatever. Like, what kid doesn't know what marijuana is? So, like, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, that's rated R.
That's
Really?
rated R. The Breakfast Club. There's a lot of F words in that one.
Yeah,
I mean, Bender alone in one scene's got like 20 of them.
Wow. I used to watch that on that was one of those ones that was always like Fox Saturday afternoon movie. So like I always saw like the television edited version.
Oh, interesting.
That's the one I saw the most of, but I mean I had already seen it, but yeah, like I love that movie. So good.
So good. So if you were to pick what R-rated movie you would personally show your kids first, what would it be?
Oh, damn. That's tough. Do you have one?
I mean,
since you came up with this idea, let me think about it. While
sure. Unfortunately, Lily's already seen a couple of R-rated movies. Like I said, we've shown her The Breakfast Club. I would show her Die Hard because I think Die Hard is one of the like most perfect films ever. I would show her Almost Famous because that's rated R. And
why is that rated R?
Profanity.
Okay.
And I mean, Kate Hudson shows her breasts for like 1.5 seconds in the movie. Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, I would show her Almost Famous. I feel like that movie's perfect. Die Hard, Almost Famous.
I think The Matrix might be the most like because they're so into superhero movies.
That would be great.
I feel like the Matrix. I feel like would be one of those movies where I could show it to them and be like, I'm not worried about what you're gonna watch.
Sure.
So I pulled up The Matrix just right now.
What does it say?
Sex and nudity is mild.
Okay.
So it's a yellow. It's got 2 yellows and 3 oranges. So the orange is worse, right? So yeah, moderate. Yeah. So violence and gore is moderate. Profanity is moderate, and frightening and intense scenes are moderate.
Yeah, like none of that screams rated R to me.
Yeah, like I'm not going to show my kids Fight Club or Seven or anything, but
right.
Like, definitely The Matrix wouldn't be something that I would shy away from.
Yeah, that would be a good one.
So
we got a couple of cool episodes coming up. We got the next 4 of them mapped out, and I'm excited about all of them. Episode 18 is going to be so September 30th of 2005 was the theatrical release of the movie Serenity, which you can see the poster directly behind me right there. We are doing an entire episode dedicated to that. I've actually gotten a lot of feedback from people saying they want to be on this episode, to the point where I'm probably going to have to just break it down to doing some small one-on-ones this week, having some pre-recorded stuff that we cut into Jason and I's actual discussion about Firefly. My plan is, starting on Monday, is to rewatch the entire series and the film so that I got it all fresh in my brain to talk about. I don't know how much of it you're planning to try to rewatch before then, but our next episode will be 100% Firefly focused. The TV show and the movie, in honor of the 15th anniversary of the movie coming out. We're going to revisit the whole show, talk about our favorite episodes, our favorite characters. I've already gotten a couple of good posts to use, at least, from people if they don't want to do videos with me. Some good stories about why Firefly is important to them and what they care about. If you're listening and haven't answered already, there is a post up on the Shane Talks Facebook page that literally asks, tell me anything about Firefly and what it means to you, because that's the greatest thing about the show, is there is something for everyone to find in that show that they can relate to and latch onto and love about the show, and then you just love everything about it from however you attach yourself. The next episode after that, what's up?
Sorry, I forgot that Good Will Hunting was rated R. Like, what is in that movie?
All profanity.
Like pulling up the parents' guide. Profanity is severe. Absolutely everything else is mild. Sorry, like that's one of those ones where I'm like, I remember it being rated R, but like, thinking about it, I'm like, I don't know. I like that movie a lot. I know it very well. So,
and I mean, as long as you're to the point with your kids that profanity isn't an issue in your household, then I mean, I don't see any reason why to hold that movie back from them.
You should show them Taxi Driver at like 4, 5 years old.
Just desensitize them to everything in society.
Yeah, absolutely.
So after the Firefly episode will be episode 19, and our shtick around here is if the episode ends in a 9, we go back to 1999. So for episode 19, we will be doing the Razzies of 1999, which technically is the Razzies of 2000 because they're 4 of the movies that came out the year before. So we're going to look at the worst movies, the worst actors, the worst actresses. Unfortunately for me, Big Daddy took home a couple of Razzies that year, and I'm very adamant that was not well deserved at all. So I'm going to be pretty argumentative on that episode about the things I love from '99 that should not have been winning Razzies. Jason will defend the fact that American Beauty won a couple of Razzies that year because I know he hates that movie. Episode 20 is going to be a fun one. Episode 20 is going to be Cinema Lockdown 2020 because this year has been bizarre to say the least. A shit show for sure. The post that I'm going to be putting up on Shane Talks, the question I'll be asking everybody is, did you pay for anything during quarantine? Were there any VOD releases that you paid for? What came out over the summer on VOD that you enjoyed watching? Palm Springs is going to be a movie we talk about because both Jason and I enjoyed that a lot. That came out this summer to give us something new to watch. I'm curious if people pay. Like I paid for Scoob because like I wanted to watch it. I bought Bill and Ted immediately as soon as I could.
You're ruining our episode. Stop talking about it.
All right. Well, so I'm gonna find out what other people were willing to pay for, and we'll talk about that. And then the last one we have planned right now is another one that as I said, I'm excited about. Is going to be episode 21. Will be called 21 and Over. It's going to focus on movies that are set in bars, and then we'll also discuss any famous scenes in bars. Like Good Will Hunting has a great scene in a bar, but the movie really isn't like set there. But we've got stuff like Roadhouse and Coyote Ugly and Cocktail and some other movies that are actually like bar specific movies that we'll go into and talk about. And then we'll just kind of address like those movies that, and I mean, we might even touch on the TV series Cheers, because growing up, that's what got me interested in wanting to go to a bar, was just watching these people sit around and make fun of each other and stuff. So
great. We're talking about movies. You want to bring up Cheers.
Why didn't they ever make a Cheers movie? That's so weird. But anyway, thank you for listening. This was a pretty long episode, but I had a lot of fun talking about why stuff was rated R and why it shouldn't have been. Jason, thank you for joining me as always. Super excited about next week. Going to be talking about one of our favorite intellectual properties, and one that truth be told, I'll tell the full story next week. I watched a couple of episodes on TV, wasn't interested in it, and then when you started showing them to your staff at Clearwater is when I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll come and give this show another shot, and that's what made me fall in love with it. So I'm looking forward to telling the real long version of that story next week. So thank you for everything this week, man, and we will catch up with everyone next week.
Good night.